It's been forever since I chatted with you, man. Since 2015.
I know, man. It's life really be life, and don't it?
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, America. He is the guru in the real estate space, and I
Definitely not a
definitely gotta
guru.
get.
Not to that
Yeah,
point.
you can tell people a little bit about you, and then I let you have the floor, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so originally from Mississippi, South Mississippi. Met Alan back in Alabama, 2015 at NAL, the first job out of college. That was some definitely interesting times at that particular location. Some
Yeah,
engineers there, so that was interesting.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, man, it's been a long since then, 2015, 7 years. It's been a long 7 or 8
Mm-hmm.
years since then. I wanted to touch on something real quick before I had to bounce on the economic issue you guys was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, this market is terrible.
What makes it so bad?
So, like you guys was discussing earlier, things are a lot more expensive, right? And I'll give a simple analogy when it comes to the market and housing, for example. Housing back then, prices were low and interest rates were high. So your grandparent or your parents could buy a house for a cheap price, but then their interest rates was probably like 13, 14%. The
Wow.
money didn't necessarily balance out to the long term pay of that, but they still could afford the house compared to what we have now. You fast forward into time, then the prices start to rise and then the interest rates drop. So now that balances out as far as the price over the long term, right? Then you get to
Mm-hmm.
nowadays where the interest rates are high and the price is high.
Yeah.
So now you're getting hit over the head twice and things are just bad all over. And so when you look at inflation, when politics and the news say that inflation has gone up 3%, 4%, whatever the case may be, really inflation is going up like 12 or 13% if you dig deeper into it. You're talking about not just they don't ever give a really deep understanding on the inflation percentage that they're talking about because I can't just say 3% of everything goes up because eggs go up if I'm using basic stuff, gas go up, the price of traveling goes up. All of this stacks on top of you. So it's not just 3%. And then you also couple that with the amounts of people that do not get the necessary raises at their jobs because most people work in a job. Barely people even get that 3% raise. Some companies may say something like, oh, well, we're not doing raises or we're having an issue. COVID was the big excuse for doing a lot of stuff when you had, in reality, some companies was able to still increase their margins during COVID and not give people raises
Mm-hmm.
and use the excuse of COVID as prices went up and we're having hiring freeze or we don't have any type of pay increases or we're not giving out raises or bonuses or something like that based on the company. I'm not going to say every company did that. So with all of that
Exactly.
coupled into there, trying to purchase a house was extremely chaotic. I stay in Alpharetta. I'm here in North Atlanta, and Miracle, you know, this part of Atlanta is expensive as hell. The cheapest
Yep.
house in
Brookhaven area
Alpharetta,
too.
right? Cheapest house in Alpharetta is 450,000, a 3.2, and it's built in like 1950, and it still needs a rehab. You don't even have stainless steel appliances. So when the market ended up shifting and the rates were low at the time, there's no way that we would be able to compete with people that's coming from other markets paying cash for these houses. You're talking about people moving from New York, from California, who are used to paying $1 million for a 1,300 square foot home, and they're like, we can pay a quarter of that.
I'm definitely gonna chime in just for a hot second.
Mm-hmm.
You are 1,000% correct. I definitely so I used to do contracting for different apartments and real estate companies as far as property management. What I'm telling you is so many people moving from New Jersey, New York, and they didn't move their whole family here and they are buying property because they're working remotely and still getting that New York money. And like they actually live in Marietta. I actually met a lady on my flight last Friday, and she told me, she was like, yeah, this is why that my family is, there. It was she was this Italian lady, and I was just surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised, but that's the name of the game right now, Ray. So I was just really piggybacking off what you were saying. So it's 1,000% correct.
Yeah, and the thing that the average person doesn't understand, like right now, because people have been accustomed to prices going up, and so when that person wants to sell a home, Joe Blow down the road sold their home for 600,000. So why can't I sell mine for 600,000? So sellers
Right.
still sit in this unrealistic mindset of I can sell my house for higher when in reality most people can't even qualify to get that type of loan or even have the money for a down payment to do that. So what I always tell people is at least try to talk to the seller to do some type of creative financing. So you can either assume a seller's loan or you can do seller financing and put a little percentage down to at least get into the house, or do a lease purchase where you're basically, renting to own the property, where you can at least come into the property with a smaller barrier of entry. So then you can eventually become a homeowner if owning a house is such the big American dream. Because right now
Mm.
everybody's going to renting. And the argument
Yeah.
throughout the test of time was, buying a house is better than renting because you're throwing your money away. And I argue that, yeah, you're throwing your money away in renting, but you technically never own your house. There's a term called eminent domain. You never own your house either
Yep.
or land.
1,000%.
Really?
So
Sorry. Go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm curious about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, eminent
And
domain
and
is basically the government can come in and if they see a fit to use your property, whether it be land or house, whatever, for public use, they can take it.
wow.
They will give you fair market value for it, whatever they determine a fair market value is, but they still can come take it. So there's always a chance. It doesn't happen pretty often. It depends on the area, but it doesn't happen
Hmm.
often as you would think, but it can happen. So people still never own their house. So the whole
Wow.
the whole reason this American dream thing, in my opinion at least, and I could be wrong, I'm not a guru, but looking at the numbers, the people that benefit in this housing thing of buying a house is banks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if you're renting,
Yep.
people be like, well, you're just making your landlord rich. Well, if you're buying a house, you're making a bank rich.
1,000%. And just to kind of put some emphasis on that eminent domain thing, my granddad owned at least 30 acres in Fayetteville, North Carolina. This is exactly what happened. So he basically, somehow they did some little loophole to where he was forced to sell, his land. So he didn't want to sell it at first. They tried to give him that fair market, price. And then it was something where they said they were putting not a radio station, but a phone tower place on the land, and also behind it they were doing a residential like neighborhood that was doing houses like 800,000 plus, but it was no $800,000 houses even on the block then. And so eventually they end up giving him less than what the land was worth per acre. And he couldn't do nothing about it. And I think it was something dealing with like a zoning law or something. It was something that, because like I remember him telling me something about one of the people, a few people down. I would say like so a few people downtown. They actually was in cahoots with these people who's like building these houses, and they pay him 200,000 under the table, just a whole bunch of stuff. And make a long story short, he was forced to sell his land that he had in the family for the past 40, 50 years, because that land was farmland at first, but they wanted to build that residential community. And so I think that was part of that eminent domain that you was talking about.
Yeah, zoning laws are very, you got to understand, and this is my conspiracy,
Okay,
just
come
as
on
a
with it.
disclaimer. You got to understand when you're looking at the NAR, the National Association for Realtors, them
Mhm.
along with HOA, along with um, a lot of the city council that actually make the decisions when it comes to rezoning something, they're all in bed with each other. And so they will make the decisions whether or not they see fit, either for their pockets or for a particular demographic to be in the area if they want it to be. And if you look at Alpharetta, for example, Alpharetta's full of money. You see Ferraris and Lambos over here all the time. It's common. Porsche, everything. So because Alpharetta gets so much money, a lot of that money ends up dripping over to cities that are closer, like Milton or up past Halcyon towards Forsyth County, and you start seeing that area start to grow as well. Well, when you go towards Forsyth County, it's a little country area. It's like, it may seem like it's in the middle of nowhere, still got some racism stuff going on there. But it's like, why is it that, the money is going here? Well, I'm creating more areas that I can create the value how I want it to be. Because if I create the value of an area at a certain price point, a certain demographic can go in there. Because I know that this level of demographic people are not making this amount of money. And look at Atlanta, for example. There's a lot of construction. We got a 32-unit townhome development going on right now in Atlanta. And unfortunately, because of the cost of material, the price point is going to be high for those type of townhomes. By default, it's gentrification. By default. Even if you don't want it to be, by default, it's gentrification. You have situations where people try to make stuff work, but then you go against the city on, well, no, you can't build that. You can't do affordable housing like that. We're not going to give you the permits for that type of thing. I've seen it happen time and time again, where you try to get permits for certain stuff in a certain area and they will not allow it, and they'll give you some legitimate reason. But in reality, we know that legitimate reason is a very gray area when it comes to the discrimination of the housing in Atlanta, for example. And what happens to people of color who don't have the money? They get pushed south. Look at Macon. Macon, you don't see the price of housing really going up like that. You're talking about $60,000, $70,000 homes that's been that price or lower for over 15 years. But then Alpharetta grows like 500% in 2 days.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was I was looking for a place in Locust Grove, and I decided to drive around, and what I like to look for is if they have some type of manufacturing facility. I saw deep in the woods of Locust Grove and near Jackson, Georgia. I was like, man, I didn't even know that they had industrial, sites there with a whole bunch of different jobs. So I know before stuff like that gets really hot, I would say as much as you can try to hop in, because I've seen some really nice places, and it's exactly like you said, it's more of the wooded area, kind of the country a little bit. But I say that you have everything that you need. You got a Kroger or like a Publix, and a good schooling district and all of that stuff. And because I like right now I want to maybe go towards. I mean, even Conyers is getting expensive. We were looking at a townhouse in Conyers, and I mean, it's I guess it's not bad from the standpoint of where we are right now, but it's still 320K plus, which that I would say it's nice, but at the same time, it shouldn't be 320, 350. And I mean, how I would look at it, the most you should pay for, a townhouse like that would probably be maybe 300 flat, or maybe, between 280 and definitely 300. So
yeah,
I guess
I agree with you. And I'll say these last two things before I got to head out.
okay.
I would say the number one way that you can see if a house is extremely overpriced, because we do new builds out here in Atlanta, is right now our current new build, you're talking $140, $141 per square foot. And if you use Zillow, for example, which Zillow is not really that accurate, used homes are near that price for new builds, which doesn't make sense. So why should I pay $150 a square foot for a home that was built in 1950 when I can build a brand new house for $140 a square foot? Now, mind you, when these people build these homes at 140 square foot, let me throw out a calculator right here. And this is for everybody to understand whenever you're going to get a house. If I want to build a 2,000 square foot home, you're talking about 280,000 just to build the property. We could probably
Wow.
bump that up to 350 for maybe some uncertainty. You're talking about 350 for a property. These same homes where you're all in at 350 for the property is they're selling it at six, seven, $800,000, which is a crazy, crazy margin, right? And so what I tell people, Texas is a perfect example of this. Texas, you have areas where
Like in
it is
Dallas?
parts of Dallas, yeah, but like parts
Okay.
in I would say parts in San Antonio, for example, because I got a buddy that stay
Okay.
out there. He went into a
Okay.
neighborhood where it wasn't really much going on, but down the street you had the stores, like you were saying, you had stores, you had your basic
Mhm.
stuff, and it's a matter of being able to withstand being in a boring area or area that's not really popping off like that for a couple years to
Mhm.
see the benefit of your house growing. Now, understanding how to buy the right house in the right location is something that people don't know. So when you look in the area, you look at the population growth, you look and see what type of jobs are coming in, what companies are coming in way ahead of time. The way you can see stuff like this is actually going to talk to like the planning committee of the county, because they have
Mm.
documents and they have paperwork from different companies that have already signed leases for land to coming in to build places, to coming in to build facilities, which means more jobs come in. You can find out what other food companies are coming in. You can find out all this stuff just by talking to some of the city committee and getting that type of information. How I know this? Because I had to go through the process.
Yeah,
We try
exactly.
to do a thing in Griffin, and I learned a lot going through the fire marshal, talking to the planning committee. They have all this information, but they're not going to tell nobody about it. So if you want to
Right.
be a home buyer and get to somewhere that's affordable, you got to wait out getting that market appreciation and not market equity, and not the equity you're paying into your house by staying in the area for a couple of years waiting on the market to go up.
Hey, that is all great information. And I know that you got to go, but before you go, people, make sure that you follow Real Estate with Ray. He definitely will be on the podcast more. As you all see, he has a plethora of real life experience with it. I would say even what since 2015, you were basically we were trying to hop on this because I remember me visiting you in Atlanta, and we were trying to get like a well, there was like a hard money loan
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, definitely he definitely has he definitely has teeth and grit in the game, and so make sure that y'all definitely follow him, is because economics is probably one of the better things that you need to understand, and not just try to get rich quick scheme that you're seeing on social media. All these people trying to teach you. Ray is somebody that I know personally, and definitely go and follow him. And if not, I will repost this, and I'll make sure that I tag him on this, because he was definitely gracious to come on and actually kind of give us some wisdom and some insight on some things that he's seeing currently in the market. So yeah, definitely don't fret, people. You all will be all right. You If you don't get a crib right now, just just wait, but also
Go,
listen to him as
go
well.
look for some foreclosures. That'd be a good
Yes.
way. Go to the county
Yeah.
and look for foreclosures.